You're listening to Travel Nursing and Allied Life, hosted by TravCon.
My next guest is the CEO and co-founder of the MedVenture app. She has been a CVICU and ICU nurse for 7 years, a traveler for 4. She is a native New Yorker and currently based out of Washington. She is passionate about creating supportive community and spaces for travelers to come as they are. Travel nursing has changed her life in every way, and she is on a mission to support that opportunity to as many people as she can, so that they can live their most authentic and fulfilled lives. Her next session, Overcoming Compassion Fatigue, Better Outcomes for Patient and Caregivers. Those sessions can be seen this year at TravCon 2022, September 18th to the 21st in Las Vegas. Ladies and gentlemen, Emily Cheng.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely, Emily. Welcome. First, let's get into a little bit about your background. I know you're excited for your compassion fatigue session this year. Is that a return session from last year?
Yes, I'm very excited because last year it resonated with a lot of people, and I think now more than ever people are even more burnt out and experiencing compassion fatigue. So I do think it'll be a topic that will draw more people to come and learn about, and hopefully really have a great discussion after.
Absolutely. And I remember last year, I wasn't able to make it, but so many people were talking about your session last year. So if you are listening to this, you better get there early, get a seat, because it's going to be filled. But Emily, can you talk a little bit about how you got so passionate with this topic and kind of what your background is in it?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Dylan introed in, I have been a ICU and CVICU nurse for 7 years and a traveler for 4. And through that time, I've experienced close to, I want to say, 10 different hospitals. And you kind of start experiencing the same themes in healthcare amongst all these facilities. And I left my home state in New York burnt out already. And I thought traveling would fix that. And it did for a little bit because you get to adventure and do all these exciting things. But then I kept hitting the wall of burnout over and over again and wondering why. And so having gone through my own experiences of burnout, I wanted to study it a little bit more and understand why this kept happening. And I then further experienced that verbalizing it on my social platforms and in general with my network of people, I realized that a lot more people were experiencing it and that I wasn't alone in that experience. And so I think it was really comforting and then also empowering to, recognize how do we support each other in hopefully not experiencing this over and over again? How do we prevent it? How do we identify it? And so, yeah, it's been something that I am hoping that the landscape in healthcare changes, only because as we're seeing, healthcare professionals are hemorrhaging out of the profession and out of the industry like never before post-pandemic. Well, maybe we're not even post-pandemic right now. We're still in the middle of it, but hopefully in the downtrend. And I'm hoping that being able to be aware is the first step. And so hopefully being aware and being able to identify the signs and symptoms of burnout and compassion fatigue will help healthcare professionals figure out how to make healthcare more sustainable in their lives.
Got it. Very, very cool. And would you say burnout and compassion fatigue are synonymous, or are those two different things?
Yeah, so I think they're thrown around very synonymously, but after doing a lot of research, I actually learned that they're pretty different in terms of there are a lot of overlapping signs and symptoms, but compassion fatigue leads to burnout and not the other way. And burnout is a lot harder. So it takes a long time to get to burnout, but it also takes a long time to heal from burnout as well. Whereas compassion fatigue is a more short-term thing. And also the causes of both of them are going to be different. So I think they're thrown around pretty similarly, but they are different.
I see. And I know just through conversations with you, there was a new term that I learned, which was moral injury. Do you want to talk on that at all? Do you want to compare those two if they're different, if they're the same? What is your take on it?
Absolutely. I think a lot of times moral injury is very specific to the healthcare industry just because of the nature of the work that we do. We obviously deal with a lot of death and disease. And I personally don't think that's a normal human experience to be able to experience this at such a large volume. I do think obviously death and disease is part of the life experience and in our personal lives, but when we're dealing with patients in the volumes that we deal with it, I don't necessarily think our system currently and also in the culture of healthcare really builds a supportive landscape for us to cope with the volume of death and disease that we experience. And so I think that largely contributes to the moral injury that we do experience in healthcare. So they do go hand in hand. And I definitely think moral injury can lead to compassion fatigue and burnout.
Got it. Excellent. Well, Emily, if you had like one big thing that you wanted everybody to walk away with knowing for this session to kind of get people hyped to come see you this year at TravCon, what would that thing be?
Yeah. I want people to walk away from my session knowing how to identify signs and symptoms of compassion fatigue and burnout. Because like I had said before, you can't know something that you don't know. And you can't be aware of something unless you're aware of it. And so it sounds super simple, but a lot of times I think healthcare professionals we're very automated in our day-to-day, and it's hard to know once we've been in, the trenches of something for such a long time. So I really hope that everyone who comes to my session is able to identify those signs and symptoms. So maybe they can reflect on themselves to see if they themselves are experiencing compassion fatigue or burnout so that they can then intervene.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Emily. And for those travelers that are bouncing from contract to contract and just feeling like they can't catch a break, this might be a must-see session for you. So please catch her session this year at TravCon 2022. It'll be in September 18th to the 21st, and it's always in Las Vegas. So thank you so much, Emily, and we will see you at the conference.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Travel Nursing and Allied Life. You can find the full show notes below or at travcon.org. Please help us out by rating our podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.